Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for July 29th, 2025. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is a webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle.
Hi, Facebook. We're back. We lost the signal for some reason.
Let's start by following up on last week's Weekly Tittle, which was called Be Honest. The assignment was to take a deeper dive into the reasons behind one of your questionable keep decisions. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who tried our self-awareness and honesty tittle this week. Please let us know in the comments. I know this was kind of a tough one. YouTube viewer Mary Lynn shared her takeaway from last week's episode in a comment. Mary Lynn writes, "So many good suggestions. I need to make a weekly appointment with myself and declutter or streamline an area. I'm good at procrastinating."
And aren't we all good at procrastinating? Let me just tell you that. We all have our sweet spot of things that we like to procrastinate about. So you're not alone. But it's good to recognize that in order to get over that procrastinating, you want to have a weekly appointment and to schedule that decluttering, just like you would schedule going to the grocery store or schedule going to the dentist. Things that aren't fun, but you have to do anyway. And decluttering is the same way. And so making an appointment that you then honor and keep is an important way to keep going towards your goal, even though it's not always fun. So good job that you figured it out. And I tell people that all the time. Figure out how long you're willing to work in one sitting before you run out of steam, or if you find the decision making becomes too hard, and schedule that appointment on the calendar and repeat it at the same time every week. So you can say, every Tuesday morning at 10, I'm going to declutter for 2 hours. And that way it becomes a habit and you keep working on it until you feel like you're done. And that would be the way to accomplish biting the elephant one bite at a time, one appointment at a time, right? So I'm glad you figured it out, and good luck with that. Go and schedule some appointments and come and tell us how it works.
Well, and last week's episode was all about honesty and self-awareness
Mm.
and that realization that I will have to book an appointment to make this happen.
Put it on the calendar in black and white.
That's a really good moment of self-discovery. I
Hmm.
just waiting for the opportunities to land in my lap isn't getting it done.
And
So
that's true for everything, right? Like every goal
yeah,
that you want to accomplish, if you just sort of wait around and hope that you eventually work on it enough to get there, it's going to be a long and painful road that takes forever. But if you can make plans and make, dedicated work appointments to work towards the goal, whatever it is, you will eventually get there. And that is a great realization to get, like Ed said. So congratulations. And we can't wait to hear how it goes.
yeah. Little report from Linda. When thinking through last week's topic of being honest with ourselves about clutter issues, I realized that trouble spots for me didn't really seem to involve dishonest thinking, but what seems more like muddled thinking. For
Mm.
example, evaluating an item and deciding that it's a useful item, I'm keeping it. Sure, it's useful, but am I actually using it in my current life? So that feels like muddled or shallow thinking to me. I'm not really thinking things through. Being honest with myself about a tendency to do that helps me make a better effort to think more clearly.
And really, what you're describing is that you set the parameters of keep or not keep solely on, is this item useful? When if you have a whole bunch of useful items in your house, it still can be too crowded, even if it's all useful. So really, you have identified that you need a second or third layer of questioning before you make that decision. So is it useful? Yes. But then you have to add the question, am I actually using it? Or do I see myself using it in the next, near future? And if it's not something that is part of your active life and what you're doing right now, then the fact that it's useful isn't really a sufficient criteria. And so it's good that you figured that out. Like, and it's shallow in the way that you just haven't drilled far enough down. Like you said, you haven't thought it all the way through. So you haven't evaluated it all the way through your own home parameters. And the fact that it's useful or isn't useful, that's a good first pass. And if it's not useful, it's easy to let go of and it makes sense to let go of it. But if it is useful and your house is full of useful things, and you're still overcrowded, then letting go of some of the useful things becomes a secondary choice that you have to make. And so you have to decide, yeah, it's useful, but am I using it? And do I think I'm going to use it? Do I think that the fact that I might use it in some realm of possibility that isn't super remote and in a future that isn't, 5 years from now? And so making that decision, refining that decision so that it reflects the parameters of your home, your use patterns, your actions in your life, how you want to live, and what your space restrictions are and storage restrictions are, makes the decision making process more unique and focused to you. And so you're just realizing that you weren't asking enough questions of yourself to
Mhm.
decide whether it could stay or not. And that's a
Well,
great realization to get.
that the word shallow thinking, the phrase shallow thinking kind of resonated with me because it struck me as what I do when I don't have enough energy or attention to spare
Mm,
right now for the decision making process.
mm-hmm,
There's a temptation to try and keep going by just ticking the box of useful,
mm-hmm.
without asking, those follow-up questions. And so maybe that's a sign that if you feel yourself, maybe you start out strong and you find yourself reaching that point, and that tells you it's time for a break. It's time to shift to another activity and then come back to these decisions that need a
Mm-hmm.
little deeper consideration,
A little
or
more mulling
be willing
or
to put that
examination.
be willing to put that in your maybe box,
Mm,
that you can that's that of items that are going to need deeper thought,
right.
right?
And
Something
you
like
are
that.
reflecting, when you run out of steam, when you've made so many decisions, you've been focused long enough that now your decision making capacity is starting to be compromised. Like it's getting too hard to make the decision. Then that's the time that you've sort of run out of steam and you need to take a break, like you said, and go do something else and come back again. And so it's good to ask all the questions. And when you don't want to ask all the questions, use that as a sign to say, okay, it isn't that I actually want to keep this one. It's that I am not able to talk. I'm too tired to get myself all the way through all the questions I need to ask here. And so I need to pause. And sometimes it's that the answers to the questions are going to distress you maybe, and so you don't want to face the reality of what's going to happen with the object. So sometimes you need to switch objects. Like, I can't decide about this one right now. If I want to keep going, I'm not out of physical steam, I'm just out of, I can't face that decision. Maybe I need to go and put that one down and go work on a different one. And maybe you can keep moving forward even though you've hit items that you feel like are too hard to work all the way through to the end in the moment. And then you can circle back for those again another time. If you still think you have steam to keep working, is what I mean.
Connie says, I watched it again, last week's episode, and got motivated to get rid of one set of items for a craft I won't pursue.
That is a great thing to do, right?
That's an important act of honesty,
Right?
recognizing I'm done with this.
I'm done with that craft, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like I have other crafts in the house. It's not like I'm going to be bereft of things to do that I find creative and stimulating. It's that this craft had a season in my life and that season is now past and I can release it to somebody else who's doing it. And that's awesome. Be into the crafts you're into, and the ones that you tried and or you're not into anymore, or it's evolved for you somehow, let that stuff go to somebody that's into it and you can focus on the ones that you're into. And it may change again later. You may shuffle all of that stuff around, over your lifetime. Those targets of crafts I'm into may roll around all the time, and that's okay. We want you to be doing what you want to do.
Okay, one more comment and then we'll get to the main topic. M
Okay?
says, I was distracted by an unconfirmed but potentially fatal diagnosis. Sorry to hear that, and I hope we hear good news from you soon, M. She says, wow, did that ever change my perspective on the stuff? It gave the experience of seeing a lot of my clutter as stuff that does not belong in my life.
Wow. We certainly don't want you to have to get a um, very
Scary
scary,
diagnosis.
distressing
Yeah.
diagnosis to reach that realization. But I appreciate that that's been part of your experience, that you got it and then you looked around the house and went, okay, now with this filter, I see all this stuff completely differently. And that is fabulous. And so if you can use that momentum to clear yourself out and make space, be more comfortable in your home while you're being treated and worked on, that would be wonderful. And we wish you the best and hope that everything goes well.
Okay. I one more. I do want to share one more tittle
Okay.
report.
Okay.
Ginger says, I can share a success story. My blue tiara glass basket with the cracked handle. Sentimental item from first bad marriage,
Ah,
or more likely sentimental about first home ownership.
ah.
I felt a really strange attachment. It finally went into a bag, then to the front porch, and finally into the trash recently, feeling a burden lifted.
Good job. That's very good. It is funny when things that there is an element of things that you associate with love and coupling and marriage that feel super significant at the time when you get them. And then if that relationship goes awry and breaks apart, then you're sort of left with all these things that used to be heartwarming and become heartache instead. And it's hard to let go of the fact that these are no longer heartwarming to me. They are now heart aching. And I don't want to feel that anymore. But I remember that when these things made me happy, and it's hard to make that switch around the stuff just like it is around the person. And so I get it that it was hard for you to get there, but I'm super proud that you did. And I'm always saying, you know, there's a point at which the stuff that reminds you of the previous person becomes bad juju. It's like you don't want that. You don't need things in the house that remind you of a time when you're sad and you feel terrible loss, and they're just poking at you and making you feel bad. And so when they switch from making you feel good to making you feel bad, it's time for it to go and not be in the house poking you anymore. And I'm glad that you did it. And so and you reported that you felt the relief from it being gone. So yay, we're clapping for you because I know that's a hard one to do, but you accomplished it and we're glad that you did. Good job.
Well, there's so much great stuff in the comments, but we have to move on.
Yeah.
A viewer asked us, can you define the term organized? The dictionary definition left us a little cold, so we've come up with one that might work better for our audience. We're also going to talk today about how to respond to people who poo-poo your decluttering efforts, as we answer viewer and listener questions and talk about short topics suggested by our audience.
We're back with Ask Us Anything after we found some great questions from our lovely viewers. The first question is a great point of view about organizing projects.
Jean asked, can you define the term organized? How do I know if I am up to standard?
So we can start with the dictionary definition, and the one that comes closest to the context in which we regularly talk about organizing is this one. Organized means having one's affairs in order so as to deal with them efficiently. That's not bad as a starting point, but we're talking about our lives here, our homes, our families, the places where we spend most of our time. So efficiency probably isn't the only or best metric to consider. Sure, we want to be some level of efficient, And then we want to be able to do things in the house easily, find things easily, process laundry, mail, dishes easily. But here's what I think we can add to the definition. How about having one's affairs in order so as to deal with them efficiently in a way that feels manageable, comfortable, and peaceful? Because I think it's not just the efficiency that we want. We want a balance between what we think we have to do to manage our home and being comfortable with what we can do. You don't need to reach a specific predefined standard, but find the moment when you feel that you've handled it enough for your level of comfort. In short, whatever works for you. If you don't want to alphabetize the spice rack, but you can sort it between spices I cook with a lot and spices that I don't use often, then that's good enough. If you're okay with containers in the pantry to sort all the items like with like, but you don't feel the need to add the labels to the containers, that's good enough. If you don't want all the shoes in their own boxes on shelves in the closet, but you're okay with the shoes lined up below the clothes, that's good enough too. My point is, you're the judge of when it's enough. When you feel relief and back in control and able to find what you need and able to handle your business, then that means you've gotten yourself organized. Can you strive for improvement beyond that? Sure. Can you go back after you've lived with your new arrangement and take it up a notch later? Sure. Get to a point where you feel relieved and functional and live with that. And if you find you want more refinement after that, you can keep going. So, to answer Jean's question, how do you know if you're up to standard? You are when you feel peaceful in your home, when you've arranged your home so you are not overwhelmed by the management of it, when you feel like you can deal with and control what is incoming to the house and outgoing from the house, when you feel comfortable having friends, family, and repairmen over to your house instead of feeling ashamed and embarrassed, when you enjoy being in your home, whether relaxing, working, pursuing a hobby, sleeping, eating, or entertaining loved ones. Because the standard you need to meet is your own, not anyone else's.
I would add, I think I would also replace efficiency with effectiveness.
Hmm.
Um, are
Different,
you,
a good different angle.
because it's your personal life. This is not,
Hmm.
we're not trying to meet a quota of profitability or productivity. I mean, that might be part of your own sense of what is a satisfying life, and that's great. But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to take anyone's external metrics of what is success.
Hmm.
And so I think someone whose home looks like a shambles to the external observer, but they've removed any risks to their own health and safety. They've removed items that cause them stress or discomfort,
Hmm.
and they're able to do the things they want to do with their life
Without a lot of struggle.
without struggle. Right, right. Then they're sufficiently organized.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, it's the level to which you start to reach a sense of peace and comfort instead of distress, stress, anxiety, it just embarrassment, shame. When you flip the script for yourself so that you feel comfortable and you feel comfortable letting people come in, then that's okay. You're okay. And I would say I have clients that live with a level of chaos that I wouldn't be comfortable living with. But that's their standard, not mine. And when we work together and they get it to a place where they're like, man, this works. I'm good with this. This is awesome. And I'm looking around thinking, yeah, I would spend another 20 hours in here, but they don't want to. It's like, that's cool. Then you guys are happy and you've reached your goal and we're done. Like, it's totally okay that how you would do it doesn't have to be the same as how I would do it. And Frankie has joined. Frankie,
Frankie
his
is
face
in
is
the
literally
meeting.
on top of the microphone. I'm sorry, he's right in the big middle of everything. He's like, don't mess with my stuff. Okay.
Okay, let's go on. This was kind of a related question. An anonymous survey. No, I'm sorry. I skip to the wrong one. An anonymous survey respondent asked us, how do you divide time between decluttering and other projects you have going? And then Ellen asked, is it normal to only be able to accomplish an hour to 90 minutes of organizing every week? I feel like I am constantly playing the chaos maintenance game and nothing ever changes, and it is exhausting.
Everyone is balancing decluttering against other projects in their life. It's about prioritizing between them. Give enough time to decluttering that allows you to make some steady progress. You don't want to tread water and making no perceptible change in the space. You don't need huge amounts of change all at once, but if you want to stay encouraged and motivated, you'll want to see some differences from the work that you do. So plan the decluttering time that allows some small visible changes to happen before switching to other projects. That and scheduled decluttering consistently, once a week, twice a week, every weekend, whatever works for you. So you can keep chipping away at your organizing projects that way. Those few hours each week will make wonderful changes in your space accumulated over time. It isn't that 90 minutes each week isn't a good amount of time. The issue is if you think 90 minutes each week means you're treading water, then it's probably not enough to stay even or not reduce the clutter. Those 90 minutes keeps you from adding to the clutter, so you're maintaining the status quo, not adding to the volume in the house. So you're doing the maintenance of the current things coming in and going out, but not spending any time on the backlog. And remember, there's always two projects happening. You're maintaining the new stuff that's coming in, and you're clearing out the old stuff that hasn't been addressed in a while. So you have to allocate time to both. It sounds like that hour and a half each week keeps your head above water, but doesn't address that backlog of stuff that's undealt with in the house from before. The answer to you is 90 minutes of maintenance is working. Now you need to add some time to work on the backlog. If you want some work on both projects, the maintenance and the backlog, you'll see progress in the home overall loosening up if you schedule time for both of them.
I had another thought on this one, which
Okay?
was it may be that the what Ellen calls chaos maintenance, it's eating up the whole 90 minutes and maybe sapping her energy. And so I was thinking a little shift in the balance between maintenance and clearing backlog
Mm,
might help to if you're typically spending 90 minutes a week just on keeping up with the current, maybe steal some of that, spend 60 minutes on that, even if it means leaving some things undone this week, and spend 30 minutes on something that will give you more satisfaction, something that produces a more visible result, something that
mm,
feels more like progress.
right? And I
And
think it's
and
still
see if that generates enough energy and enthusiasm to make the 60 minutes on maintenance more effective.
mm,
Just a thought. That's if 90 minutes is the extent of Ellen's energy and stamina, you know?
for the week, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if you want to keep moving on both fronts, and so if you wanted to take that appointment and split it between current stuff and backlog, that's great. And if that means that you, I mean, I still think from what you're saying that you need to add a second appointment during the week to do it. So maybe it's that you do 60 minutes on maintenance one part of the week, and another part of the week you do another 60 minutes and you do backlog that day, or you do half and half each time. So 45 minutes of one week, I mean, one appointment, and then the second appointment you had, you also split. So you're going back and you're working on both of the projects some amount of time every time you work, even if it's only 45 minutes or 30 minutes at a time. It will still make progress. It'll just be slow. But I think if that 90 minutes is what's required to maintain it, then you got to plug that 90 minutes in somewhere and add some time to work on the backlog. And it sounds like you're going to need more than one sitting a week to get there.
Yeah. Okay. Sandra asked, do you have conversations with clients about things that will be problematic after they die if they choose to keep them? My husband finally agreed last week to get rid of a broken hunting rifle. Yay.
Mm.
And where I live, that means the police will come to your home to collect it.
Oh,
During my chat with the agent, I realized his other rifles could not go to our son eventually without him asking for a proper gun ownership license, which is a long process in Canada. Some things like that need more planning than we realize.
I do have that conversation with clients. It's hard to deal with. If it's hard to deal with right now, it's still going to be hard to deal with when you're gone and your heirs have to deal with it. Specifically, I talk to clients a lot about passing on collections of any kind. They decide where stuff should go in their mind, but they often forget to ask the recipient if they want what's being offered. For anything that you consider significant, it's important to know if your intended recipient is interested in the item or the collection of items or not. It's better not to give things to an unwilling recipient. One more thing is to spend the time looking for someone who shares your interest in your collections and arrange to gift it to them before you're gone. Or leave the resource and the contact information with your family so that they can pass them on to someone who cares about the stuff like you do. And ultimately, don't assume that your heirs have the same interest in the collections and the stuff that you do. That's always something that we're not very honest with ourselves about. It's the idea that I think this is fabulous, therefore my children will think it's fabulous. And that's not always true.
I thought this was a really interesting question and maybe a sort of a bonus tittle for our audience, which is think about your stuff in terms of how hard how hard it would be to get rid of it at any point. And so I wasn't thinking about collections, but that's a that's one good one because to get rid of a collection the right way, I'm putting air quotes around that,
Mm-mm.
um, it can be a lot of can be time consuming, hard work.
Yes.
But other things, like guns, I know you had a client who you had to organize paraphernalia related to their personal habits. I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you have anything in your house that would be embarrassing to you for people to have to deal with it,
Yes,
make
yes,
a
yes, yes.
plan. Anything that would be, yeah, anything that you have that's illegal or controversial. I'm thinking, a collection of like Nazi paraphernalia. Some people might find that very triggering and upsetting to find. Um, so do you think optional tittle? Think about whether you have anything in your house that you ought to just get rid of now instead of making anyone worry about it after you're gone,
Right. Or be shocked when they find it after you're gone.
right?
I know some people might think, oh, it'll be funny to goose them in that way, but I think you probably just want to think about what you want your family to find and remember about you and what chores you are leaving for them to do. I actually had to say to a client, I went to do an assessment last week, and I ended up saying to this client, he's in his 70s, his wife is in her early 60s, so there's probably 10 or 12 years difference between them. And they live in a house that they did some renovations in the kitchen, but there's still some things to be finished, and they've never gotten them finished. And so the kitchen hasn't ever been set up completely like it should be. And then their garage burned down, and so they have to build a new garage. And I said to him at some point, you're probably going to pass away before your wife does. And if you do, and you haven't finished these projects, you're leaving her with a major project that has to get done before she can sell the house if she needs to sell the house. And so, do you really want to leave this unfinished renovation and this construction project with the garage undone for her to have to pick up that ball later? and it's a lot of work to expect her to do. He had been in the business, like these things had gotten done because he's has experience in it. It's which his business. And so I just had to remind him, if this isn't complete before you're gone, then whatever she decides to do in terms of staying in the house or later retiring or later moving into assisted living for her own management, she's going to have to finish all these renovations to the house in order to sell it. And it's going to be a big hassle for her. And so, better for you to do it with the skills that you have and the people that you know and the resources that you have. Do it now and get it done so it's not a chore that you're leaving for your wife while she's grieving the loss of you. And I think he had never thought about it that way. I could see this sort of, I got the wide eyes and the big shock factor from him, and thought, yeah, you should think about what you're doing here. You can procrastinate, but then you're leaving this project for your wife to deal with after you're gone. And I don't think you really want to do that. And I I think we can all look at some of our stuff and go, yeah, I love this collection, but it would be a big hassle for someone that isn't into it to manage it and deal with it after I'm gone, because they don't have the same level of understanding of the collection. They don't understand who's into it. They don't understand why it's important. And, trying to making whoever is the executor try to figure out how to be an expert enough to know how to sell what you've got is putting a big chore on them that they may or may not be willing to do. And so your collections may not get handled how you want. Just a thought.
Paula says, a family member I will likely have to clean up after their death has a collectible that is offensive. If it's
Mm.
still around, I've vowed to break it and dump it in the trash.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I think that's your right. After they're gone, they can't enjoy it anymore. So you can get rid of it. And it
Okay.
would be hard to dispose of something like that too. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. Like, how would you give it away? It'd be
Yeah.
horrible to do that. It'd be so hard.
Amy asked, do you and Ed have any tips for someone in my position? My husband has stage 4 metastatic cancer. Diagnosed last year, those 12 months flew by. Everything at home was neglected, especially with all of the out-of-town travel for treatments. This year continues to be challenging since the cancer has gone into other places. It's a full-time job researching and implementing every single possible tactic to try to extend the length and quality of life for my husband. My own mortality feels all the more close. How can I make progress on decluttering in the midst of all this? The emotional and mental exhaustion of being caregiver, researcher, and implementer leaves me feeling out of gas.
This is a situation where decluttering has to take a back seat to something infinitely more important. First, lower the standards of what has to be done. Don't worry about maintaining fancy multi step processes or systems. You can go back to those later. Right now, make your processes and systems as easy as possible with as few steps as possible. And ask for help, either with the research or with the basic cleaning chores or with managing meals or driving to doctors. If you need to spend extra time on research and chauffeur services, you can delegate other things to people who want to help and don't know how to help. Let them do things they can do and free you up to do things that only you can do. And some things it's okay to wait, because what's going on with your husband is way more important than whether the paperwork is filed. So give yourself a little bit of grace here and allow as how what you're spending your time on is more important than the state of the house. And you can ask for help around that. You can ask for people to come and help you. And it'd be a good thing for them to do.
Okay. Peggy asked us, what is your decluttering or organizing bugaboo, the thing that you keep getting bit with?
Do you want to do yours first?
Well, that's easy for me. It's always the paper, and specifically financial, legal, and tax paperwork. It's I never want to do it. If I did it, for 25 minutes a day, I would still never get used to it, would never find it not a burden.
Right.
It's the thing that is always there. Like any other decluttering project, I can face it and say, yeah, I've been ignoring this for a while. Boom, boom, boom. pulled some things out to donate or throw away, and we're done.
Right.
But that financial paperwork, just,
Is the worst.
it is the worst. It is absolutely the worst.
Uh, so, excuse me, I would say the garage. I like and organize a garage, don't get me wrong. And I'm very satisfied when I clear up a client's garage, but I don't like being outside in the heat and walking on concrete so much and getting so filthy. Garages are just a lot of dust and bugs and sweat. And I'll get around to organizing anything in the house eventually, but I avoid the garage hard. I do not want to be out there. I do not want to be dealing with it. And so it does, poke at me to finish it, straighten it up. Like there's still detritus in there left over from the move. There's still ways that I would organize the garage that I have not been willing to face yet. And it's always the last thing. Anything outside the house is always the last thing I want to deal with. It makes me crazy.
It might be different if you didn't live in Houston,
That's true. But
where
I do.
where
And there you go.
garages where garages are unpleasant for about 10 months of the year.
Right? Like the only time I'm willing to do it is in February when it's, 50 outside, and then I'm happy to be out there.
Okay, Sandra asked, do you have clever answers for the non-declutterers? For instance, I was telling someone the other day that I was so happy my husband finally accepted getting rid of our CDs, about 100, and all I heard was that I was throwing money away. This person was quite disappointed to learn the charity shop would be selling them for about $1 each, or maybe less. What do you
So
think about that?
first, let's talk specifically about your example, the thing about turning your clutter into some amount of money to justify getting rid of it. It's all well and good to try and sell stuff and get cash back out of something, but if the work you have to do to get those few dollars back is a huge time suck and it's annoying, then it's a typical cost benefit analysis. If the cost is 6 hours of your personal time versus $10 to sell 10 CDs, you might read that equation is not really worth it. Maybe selling a car. So 25 hours researching how to sell the car in a secondary market, going through the best process to sell in your area, and then selling an old car for a few $1,000s. That might be a positive cost benefit analysis. But you're the one who decides what amount of your time is worth it for you to surrender to benefit from the sale of that item. And then aside from that example, I wanted to address the more general idea of someone responding negatively to your decluttering plans and actions. If you're making plans and then getting into action around decluttering in a way that works for you, then no need to listen to those who complain, make negative comments, or tell you you're doing it wrong. You're the only one who has to agree to the plan to deal with your stuff, and they can deal with their own stuff how they want. So I say stay away from or tune out those who give you negative feedback about your work. And if you ask for advice on how to proceed, that's one thing. If you ask, then listen to the answer and decide if their advice works for you. But if you didn't ask for help or feedback, then you can say, thanks for your thoughts, but I've already decided what I want to do, and leave it at that. For those who persist in commenting to you in a negative way, you can say, let's not talk about this, or you can walk away from them or change the subject. Truly guard your own peace of mind. Decluttering is hard enough without someone pouring negative feedback onto your plans and your work. It's worth it to find a way to avoid or deter those who feel the need to comment like that, because you don't need that kind of feedback in your life, especially when climbing the decluttering project plan is a hard enough lift. You're working hard enough to be in motion and to be doing something about it. You don't need somebody knocking you down, giving you negative feedback around it. And so let's avoid those people. Let's tune them out. Let's not talk to them about it. Change the subject. That's my advice.
Paula says, sometimes it's nice to be at the age where I can simply say that I'm downsizing and everyone nods like that's totally reasonable, because it is.
Because it is exactly right. And you don't have to explain your downsizing in any way at all. Exactly
Well,
correct.
my other reaction to Sandra's question was to think about crabs in a bucket. I'm sure everybody here has heard the expression about crabs in a bucket. If you put some crabs in a bucket, they could actually climb on top of each other and climb out, but that's not what happens. Whenever one gets too close to the edge, the other's grabbing onto him to try and climb over him, pull him back in. And so people
Oh,
use crabs in a bucket to mean, those people who will pull you down rather than let you grow and change in the way that you're trying to grow and change. There are people
exactly.
who, when you tell them I'm decluttering, they are, for whatever reason, frightened or intimidated
Triggered
or
or,
get triggered in some way by
mm,
your choice to do that. And that's their problem.
right? That's not a you problem. That's a them problem, 100%. And to you don't need to climb out on with their approval. Like you don't need
Right.
to do your decluttering project with their approval behind you. You can do it how you want and accomplish what you want and get to the goal that you want and whatever path works for you. And anybody that doesn't want to be on board, you're not asking them to do it for you anyway. So there you go.
Of
They
course,
don't have to be
Sandra,
on board.
I think Sandra was looking for the short and pithy response,
And right?
and May provided it. May said, new response, okay, Crabby.
Perfect. That is perfect. Yay. I love it. Which is a perfect reflection of, yeah, I hear what you're saying and you sound like a grump. And I'm guessing that it's probably going to be not the first time those people have gotten that feedback. Let me just say. If they lead in the world in that way, they've probably been told that they're a grunt before now. So I love, okay, Krabby, that's perfect. Shut them down in a hurry, man.
Oh, right. Let's see. Let's go to Anya. Anya said, some time ago you stated that DVDs are obsolete in general. I
Mm,
beg to differ because I like having movies my own and rewatch them.
mm.
I do have a sizable collection, but those are not a burden to me or my living space. I don't like streaming on my TV because I don't want to connect it to the internet. I might be quirky or strange, but that doesn't bother me. It is part of a decluttered life for me not to have Netflix or something like that because these services make me actually feel bad. I like these boundaries. Do you see advantages to old media stuff too?
I think you should do what you feel comfortable with doing. A collection that gets used, you watch the DVDs in your collection as your form of entertainment. That's how you get have fun, and that makes it a valuable collection and makes it fine as items you keep in the house. Where DVDs become an issue is when a person has a large collection, but they've moved on to streaming services as the source of their entertainment. So they don't use the DVDs, and so they have become an unused collection that's gathering dust instead. That's when the collection needs to be move on out. Needs to be sent on out of the house. Like I said before, if you're using them, then that collection is a valuable part of your entertainment in the house and it deserves for you to make a place for those DVDs to be used. And that's true for any collection of items that live in your space. Those things you actively use deserve a space to be made in your home. And those not actively being used need a reevaluation about the space that they take up. And that's really the point that I'm making that, if you have a collection and it's an unused, unpaid attention to collection, it's using up a bunch of storage space, maybe it doesn't need to be there. But if you're actually using the DVDs, then that's another thing. It's part of your active use contents and it deserves its space in the house.
Okay. This is a short one. I don't know how much you have to say about this, but it was interesting. Celeria asked, "Do either of you struggle with insomnia? Do you have any sense of how prevalent insomnia might be in your clients?"
I don't struggle with insomnia. Do you?
I do not. No, I'm
I can sleep if I go to bed. My struggle with going to bed is it going at a reasonable
just doing it.
time. Yeah, like because I'm a night owl, it's easy for me to stay up later than is reasonable. And so that's my struggle. Some of my clients have insomnia, but most of them don't. And I really haven't seen a
No.
correlation of
See any trend?
insomnia in my clients. No, there's other trends amongst my clients, but insomnia, I wouldn't say is one of them.
Okay. Maybe we'll include that in a future survey.
Right?
Just, see see if there's any tendency there. Let's see. Do we have time for a couple more, I think. Jennifer asked, Gail, what is your dream beading project? The thing that bites your ankle and makes you say, this is where all of my knowledge and learning about this craft is going to pay off.
That's a really interesting question. I actually experienced a small version of this feeling during the pandemic shutdown. There's a museum of beadwork that is now open, and at the time it was getting ready to open, and they put out a call for submissions of 6 by 6 inch beaded square. So it's, it's a square that's sort of the size of a hot pad, I guess is the best way to put it. And so my friends and I all got to work on the squares. And I'm proud to say beating a full 6 by 6 square was a fun challenge for me. If you go to the museumofbeadwork.org, and then you can click on exhibitions, and you'll find the beaded square project. And if you click that, you can see the story of what they did, and then scroll down and you can see all of the entries. And mine is number 386. 2020 was a hurricane. It's the largest project I've done so far, and it was a challenge to finish it by the deadline, but we had tons of fun doing it. And now I have one 6 by 6 square hanging in a museum. It was very rewarding and exciting for me. Oh, and Ed's putting the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Museumofbeadwork.org. It's in the northeast part of the country, and it's attached to a large beads seller that sells wholesale. And my friend Penny actually was up there. She went up there and walked around and saw it and took pictures of all of our squares, and sent us texts and said, "I can see there's your square on the wall." So it was a lot of fun, and they have some really interesting stuff in there. So well, I'm hoping that we get to go as a crew someday, and I'll go up and look at the pictures, look at our pieces hanging on the wall. That they made the Beaded Square project a permanent exhibit, and then they've done since then other calls, create a fill in the blank, and they hang like they did one about stars, and they hung stars from the ceiling for a while, but that one was a temporary one. It wasn't a permanent one. So anyway, it was very exciting. That was my, fabulous project, and it had it was bead embroidery. It had a lot of my favorite colors in it. It had some uh, ribbon in it too. Sequins. I used a lot of materials. It was a lot of fun, and it was sort of all of my focus and all of my years to make this big square. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. This one I'm throwing you a curveball because you didn't put down any talking points for it, but I bet you can answer this on the fly.
Okay.
Margaret asked, how do you feel about under the bed storage? It's not ideal because out of sight is out of mind, and I forget it's there. I also like the feeling of lightness that comes from not having things stuffed under the bed. And she added, it's better feng shui I've read.
It's true. And, the cats always like getting under the bed. If you have little dogs, they like being under the bed. Uh, I think that under the bed storage has a place as a secondary storage area if you don't have anything else. And really, what it's good for is dry dock storage because it's awkward and it's weird. And the boxes that they make to go under the bed typically have wheels on them, but they make them long and not very tall because there's only so much room under the bed, right? And so, you have to have the right container so that it's easy to pull things in and out. And B, you want to put things in that you don't have to get every day. It's where you need to stash things that you don't want to deal with on the regular. And so in Houston in particular, if they need under the bed storage because they don't have sufficient storage elsewhere, it's a place that I would put, here's where I'm stashing all my tax returns that have already been filed and the support material for them. Or here's what I'm doing with my heavy duty winter wear because I can only wear it a month and a half out of the year in Houston. And so it does need to be in the closet, jamming up the closet space until, that month and a half arrives. And then I can go under the bed and pull them out and hang those things in the closet and use them. And then when the season has passed, I can put them back in the boxes under the bed and roll them back away. So I think of it as dry dock, just like the cabinets that are in the kitchen that are way over your head that you have to climb on a ladder to get into. That's dry dock too. You don't want to put things away up that high or in an awkward way to retrieve it unless it's filled with stuff that you don't have to get very often. because who wants to climb a ladder once a week to pull something down? So it's part of how I plan the spaces, and it's easier to clean and take care of under the bed if it doesn't have a bunch of stuff under there. And if you need the space to expand your storage, it's a logical place.
I think it'd be a good place for uh, gifts that people gave you that you felt compelled to keep so that you can put them out when they come visit,
And then take them back down again.
and then put them away again back under the bed after they leave
Right,
town.
exactly. Well, and I was just in somebody's house who her family is Indian, and so she has a whole bunch of Indian designed fashion
Hmm.
that she wears to specific events.
Yeah.
And so it's not stuff she wears in daily. If clearly she's not wearing it out to go to dinner, she's wearing it when she goes to a family event, a wedding, blah blah blah. So those things are something that she has to wear a couple times a year. And so she doesn't need those things taking up space in her closet when it's only going to come out once a year. So she bought clear boot size container store boxes that are probably like 6 inches tall. And then they're boot size, so they're like 12 or 14 inches wide and deep. And she was able to fold up her outfits, one outfit for per box, and then she stuck those way up on the highest shelf. And my client was probably 5 feet 2 inches, so clearly she's going to have to crawl up a ladder to get those. But in the meantime, she can see in the box, so she can tell what outfit is where, and they're out of her way so that the cat can't get into them, and they are not choking up her closet space. And then when she wants them, she puts a ladder and finds the one she wants and she pulls it down. And so um, there is some purpose for all that out of the way shelving that you have. It just needs to be stuff that you don't use all the time or even remotely often. You put in dry dock the things that you need once or twice a year. Because then it's
Oh,
a whole project just to get them down. Like it's a whole
yeah.
thing to try to get it out of the storage area to use it. And so you have to factor that removal process into your into your work for the day.
Okay, we have time for I think one more. An anonymous survey respondent asked, "Why is it so hard to stay organized and clean for me when it is so easy for others?"
Well, the easy answer here is because we all have different skill sets. Some of us are great at organizing, some are great at cooking, some are great at throwing parties, some are great at theoretical physics. The slightly longer answer is a combination of innate skills, what we were or were not taught, what else is happening in our lives, what physical impairments we're dealing with, and what mental struggles we carry. We can't all be great at everything. And for some, cleaning and organizing is not their strong suit. For me, it's something that is easy and not a struggle. For others, it's the opposite is true. And for Ed, being in the kitchen is easy and not a struggle. And for me, being in the kitchen is annoying and irritating. And so it's just, and therefore I have no skills in cooking because I don't like to be in the kitchen. So it's really, we all have different skill sets. And I use that example because the way, should I be able to cook? Yes. Is it reasonable that I would learn how to cook because I have to eat every day of my life? Yes, it is. And yet I still don't want to do it because I find it so annoying. And so, we all don't have the skills and the interests to do everything on the planet there is to do. And it's just not your skill set. And asking for help in that environment is perfectly reasonable because unless you really want to fight your own natural inclinations enough to learn, I mean, I'm sure that you have learned some over time because you're clearly coming to listen here to learn. But if you haven't evolved as far as you would wish, and you don't feel like you have the energy or the strength to keep getting better at it, it's a good point at which to intersect with someone else that finds it more comfortable to do it and let someone come and help you. And then you can have the results you want without being super irritated about that you can't do it yourself.
And then circling back to the first question we talked about, um, set a definition for yourself of what organized means
Mm.
that is satisfying to you.
It is sufficient.
Make sure you're not trying to meet someone else's standard.
Yes. Very good point. Absolutely.
All right, we are just about out of time. Let's talk about next week. We will be back at the usual time, Tuesday, August 5th at noon US Central. And we're going to talk about some of Gayle's favorite organizing solutions and products. So join us for that next week. I also want to remind people that we'll be doing our next book club episode on October 14th, and the book is ADD Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life by Kohlberg, Kolberg, and Nadeau, Nadeau. And so if you haven't already gotten your hands on the book, do that and read it and come talk to us about it on October 14th. Gayle, will you give us the title?
Of course. This week's title is Redefining Organized. This week's assignment is to come up with a personal definition of organized to use for measuring success in your decluttering and organizing efforts. Reflect on what would be different in your home or your life if you were sufficiently organized. Make a list of specific changes in your life that being organized will help you accomplish, such as what will you be able to have, to be, or to do that you aren't able to have, be, or do now? What new activities or opportunities will be available to you that aren't now? What positive feelings or emotional states will your organized space provide? What negative feelings and emotions will be diminished by getting organized? Keep your list and revise it occasionally to check your progress towards your ideal organized state. As we've said earlier, we want you to decide what good enough is to you and figure out at what point do you feel relief, comfortable, happy, peaceful in that space. And when you've reached it, you're organized enough. And if you want to go back later and improve it, that's great. But let's aim for good enough right now. And when you get there, then you can talk about making it fancier. Okay. Go back and think about it and come tell us about it next week.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from our audience, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
So glad to see you guys this week. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ask Us Anything. I find answering these questions a lot of fun, so I appreciate that you guys go to so much trouble to give them to me so that I can answer them. Thank you. And we will be back next week with some more stuff. So see you then.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.